Hello, and welcome to Based on Facts, where fiction and superstition meet logic and scientific facts, on WELT 95.7 FM, broadcasting from the Allen County Public Library. My name is Chris Rex, with my wife Uriah, and today we will be discussing the rise in atheists, or rise of the atheists, so to speak, over the past few years. Now, to start with, I'd like to go ahead and define what atheism is. For those of you who aren't the most familiar with this term, I'm an atheist. I know a number of other people here in town that are atheists.
You gotta say it right. Hi, my name is Chris, and I'm an atheist. Hi, Chris.
Fair enough.
That's how it feels sometimes.
Atheists Anonymous, the new AA. We'll get to more of that later, because actually does have some truth to it. Anyway, Dictionary.com defines atheist as being a person who denies or disbelieves the existence of a supreme being or beings. Now, that's a fancy way of saying don't believe in a god, okay? Or don't subscribe to the notion that there is a god, or angels, or demons, or fairies, or whatever else.
So don't subscribe to supernatural or higher being.
Right. So that's essentially what we're getting at. And part of the drive for this movement has been really focusing on the evidence for those supernatural things, which is a fancy way of saying that there really isn't much, if any, evidence for any of those things. That's why there are more and more atheists coming out all over the world. And we'll get back to that later. Sometimes, though, atheism is kind of confused with agnosticism. Okay, now they are very, very similar in a number of respects, because they're basically two different ways of saying that we don't subscribe to organized religion. Okay, they're kind of included in the not religious category. Now, agnostics are defined as being people who believe it is impossible to know anything about God or about the creation of the universe, and refrains from committing to any particular religious doctrine. Okay, so with that respect, we really have that in common with agnostics. As far as between atheists and agnostics, neither of us really subscribe to religion. Okay, and so often you see them being kind of lumped into one category, along with a few other categories as well. But really, those are the two biggest categories: is atheists and agnostics. Now, when I'm talking about the rise of atheism here in America, and really globally, worldwide we see this phenomenon, kind of talking about a certain situation where the percentage of atheists are actually increasing over time. Okay, and it's still not something that's really out there in the spotlight very much. Okay, it's still kind of people in the shadows more often than not, being afraid to come out, so to speak, to their families, and that's because they're afraid, and part of that comes to this stigma that's associated with atheism or agnosticism, the notion that you have these people that don't believe in anything, right? They don't believe in a God, they don't have a Bible to guide their lifestyle and to give them morals and all this stuff. And that makes people afraid of atheists and agnostics.
Not just afraid, but it makes them be very judgmental and more often than not disrespectful. Because you get the statement a lot of, you don't believe anything? Well, then what's the point of life if you don't believe? You know, if you don't believe this, what do you believe in? You don't believe in anything? That sounds depressing. You know, they give you responses like that, or I don't know, they just, for some reason, if you say that you don't believe in the supernatural, it's like you're weird for not believing in something that you can't see. Because the entire country is wanting to believe in ghosts, they're wanting to believe in religion, a higher being, whatever it is, whether it's one, the other, or all of it, because they want to know that either someone's watching them, someone that they cared about that's passed away, whatever it is, they take comfort in that. And that's why they want to believe in ghosts or angels and things of that nature. And so when you really look at the idea that you meet somebody else who doesn't believe that at all, you kind of have a Huh, well, that's a little different. It's kind of depressing. What do they believe in? And they lose a little respect for you, and they just, that's really weird apparently to the rest of the country. When if I looked at somebody and said, you believe in Santa Claus, really, and the Tooth Fairy, you believe all that? You know, it's been in the history books for years and years and years. It's very traditional. You know, they're all based on gods. And you're calling me weird because I don't believe in Santa Claus? Because you do? Interesting.
Yeah, but anyway, the interesting thing is that we've been seeing more and more people that are not religious over time. In particular, the past 20 years, really, it's really been climbing. And in a number of countries, the number of non-religious people outnumbers the number of religious people. And that's incredible. I love seeing that trend. But what's interesting is that here in America, we still seem to be kind of under a false illusion that atheists either are such a tiny, insignificant portion of the population that they really don't matter, or that they are so quiet that they also kind of don't matter. But lately, in the past couple decades, we've been starting to get out there and starting to give a voice, starting to make our presence known and make people aware of the types of things that we are subjected to and the ways that we are discriminated against. And that's what's really pressuring these people to stay in the closet, so to speak, and to not let their family know that they don't believe in God, that they are not Christian, that they don't subscribe to any religion of any kind.
And I wonder why it's the past 20 years. Why the past 20 years? Why haven't atheists been more vocal in the past? Well, I think it's due to the fact that social media is huge and everything is online. And you go on any social media site, you have your name, your birthday, favorite quotes, movies, books, and there's also a lot of personal information like what's your political background, what is your religious background. You know, they ask all these things and it's right there for the whole world to see, and if you don't think about it, you might accidentally out yourself, or if you want to out yourself, you know, you make that statement. People put who they are out there for the entire world to see, and you couldn't do that before. And people can organize, or social media can just blare everything in everyone's faces. So on the opposite side of that, anyone who is religious, wanting to start things in schools or wanting to do things in the city, it makes religion it gives religion a much bigger foothold in the community, which is fine as long as it follows the separation of church and state. But the past 20 years, as technology opens up the communications, that allows religion to communicate even more. And it makes me wonder if the past 20 years, if religion is pushing a little bit too far, that nice line between church and state, I really believe they have been pushing that boundary. And it finally is enough is enough. The atheist community is pushing back. And that's, I think, what's causing us to be more vocal, especially with a lot of the things with the LGBT, things of that nature arising and becoming more social media focused. And a lot of their allies, it's great that they have a lot of religious allies, but I would think most of their allies are either atheist or agnostic. And that's bringing them out when they are asked, well, are you gay or are you a lesbian? Like, no, I'm straight, but I believe they should have this because. And it brings out that non-religious affiliation.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Technology and communication.
It really is. But no, that's a great point to bring up with the gays and the lesbians and such, because actually there was this poll in 2015 by Gallup that showed that 23%, that Americans believe that 23% of the U.S. population is either is homosexual to some degree. Whether they're homosexual or bisexual, they're just not heterosexual, so to speak. So
let that sink in. You walk out your door and 23%, that's almost 1 in 4 people,
right.
Almost.
Right.
And you look out your door and you pick out 4 people. You think that one of those 4 people are part of the LGBT community. And you do that in a whole bunch, because sometimes, you pick out 4 people, none of them are going to be that. But you keep doing it all around in a busy city, you're not going to get 23%. You look around, it's just that number is ridiculously high.
And, to be fair, I've thought pretty high numbers myself for that kind of thing, just because I have been seeing it a lot lately, and so.
But why have you been
I'm
seeing it a lot?
absolutely guilty of that. Granted, I guess I might see it a lot when I go and take part in a pride parade or march.
Or we go and support benefits for the gay community. So you kind of put yourself in harm's way. But at the same time, why do you believe that that number is so high? Why is that your initial idea?
I think that's the same notion that you think there are a lot of potholes on the road that you drive every single day, because you know the exact 3 potholes that you hit every single time, and you're so infuriated, and you're like, why doesn't the city fix this crap? This has got to be the crappiest road in the entire city, because these 3 giant potholes. And it's like, well, that's really a drop in the bucket compared to some roads which have 20 in a 2-block span. Okay.
Not to say that gay and lesbians are crappy things the city needs to fix. Not what we're saying at all. We're just making a comparison.
Right. And the fact that you don't stub your toe every single time that your foot comes near the couch. It seems like it.
Every time you stub your toe, it seems like it happens all the time.
Yeah, because I know that I've stubbed my toe on that stupid couch at least 5 different times. And I swear, it's every time my foot comes within a foot of distance away, it's going to slam right into that couch.
Well, granted, your big toe is more like a giant's toe, so it's really easy for you to stub your toe. He has monstrously large feet and disproportionately large big toe. It's like this giant, I don't know what to call it, missile. It just seeks out furniture pieces, and it just, like he said, a foot raise, he just boom. It's pretty hilarious. But anyway, point is that you think there's a high number of gay people because you probably know 1 or 2 gay people that you see a lot or interact with. You might drive by a gay nightclub or something of that nature, or social media blasts it in your face.
Right.
Just like right now, I'm seeing all the political stuff. All I'm seeing is vote Trump, vote Trump, vote Trump. Hillary's bad, Hillary's bad, Hillary's bad. But I bet if I went somewhere else, I would see the opposite. I would see vote Hillary, Trump is bad. It's all about where you put your tunnel vision.
So, needless to say, we're going to try to stay away from politics during this episode. Going back to the 23% perception. Okay, this was 2015. And the reality in 2015 was that only about 4% of the population was gay, lesbian, or bisexual. Okay, 4%. That's actually a number of 1 in 25. Okay, 1 out of every 25 people that you meet is gay to some degree.
Yeah.
Okay. That's much more reasonable to me. It makes a lot more sense to me.
Well, if we think about it, do you know the population of Fort Wayne, or a close number, not exact?
I always forget. I think it's... I'm not even going to try to guess, because I thought it was like 200,000 or something, but I can't even remember.
Okay, so we know it's at least 100,000.
I might even be making that up.
No, I think 100,000 is pretty close. But even at that point, we did the Pride March with Fort Wayne, and there was about 1,000 people there. So, yeah, that's only about 4% of the entire population of Fort Wayne. You get about 1,000 people. Yeah, that's about an accurate description.
So, I don't know. I didn't even get a good final total on the number of people in the Pride March anyway. So, I really don't know how many people were there. I'm going to have to look that up. But anyway, so the point is that 2015, we actually had 4% of the population in the entire U.S. being gay to some degree. Now, we go back in time to the year 2000. Guess what the percent was? About 4 or 5%. Okay, so in 15 years, the amount of the U.S. population that was gay has remained about the same. It really has.
Yeah.
It hasn't increased over time at all. So what can explain this whole gay everywhere thing in the past 15 years? Is it because gays are just multiplying like crazy and, coming out of the wet works and somehow, undergoing binary fission like a paramecium or something and just cloning themselves and, dominating the world? No. That has nothing to do with it.
No, because they haven't grown. And if they have kids or if they're around kids, they are not using upbringing as a way to make more people gay. So yeah, that has no influence environmentally.
Right. And so it's very interesting looking at this and seeing that the gay community has been growing just because they've been coming out more, been getting more involved with, like you said, social media. That's really just blown up in the past 15 years. I mean, 15 years ago, we didn't have really much in the way of social media.
MySpace!
You know, I was really limited to instant messaging, for those few people who actually know what that still means. Okay, that was chat rooms and stuff. Okay.
OMG, you speak I am?
A part of my inside just died. Goodness gracious. But yeah, so it's all these phenomenons. And the fact that we've seen these gay pride marches letting us know that the gay community is strong and is there and has been there the whole time.
We are here, we are here, we
Right.
are here.
And it's really just about developing awareness, especially awareness to the injustices and discrimination
Yeah.
that often accompanies coming out in those ways.
So to tie that into how does an atheist feel? Because do we know the percentage of the United States that claim to be atheist?
Yeah, so in 2014, a Pew study actually showed that atheists and agnostics comprised about 7% of the population.
Yeah, let that sink in.
Okay, so almost twice as much of the population of gays as the population of atheists.
And it's still small.
Okay, now we can compare that to 7 years prior. Okay, so 2007. Atheists and agnostics only comprised about 4% of the U.S. population. So in a 7-year span, they've almost doubled in population.
And why is that?
And that comes to the global trend towards atheism, because more people have access to more information, and when they can have access to the facts, they can see that, hey, you know, maybe my religion isn't the answer to everything. And so they can actually go to Google, they can type in their questions and get answers instantaneously.
Yeah. When information is readily available, knowledge will be nurtured.
Right. I mean, it's easy to be brought up in a basement and be shut out from the entire world, you know, using technology from 30 years ago. But modern day, you can get anything you can possibly imagine in seconds with access to the internet.
Unless you have dial-up.
For those
That's
few
unfortunate.
poor souls that have dial-up still.
Our
sorry.
hearts go out to you, but the wait is worth it.
Right.
The wait is worth it. You keep Googling that.
Well, the sad part is that nowadays, with all the ads that are on so many websites, you literally would have to sit there, if you were on a dial-up connection, you would have to let it sit there for 10 minutes just to download a single web page because of all the interactive Flash and Java
That's a
ads
good point.
on everything. Especially since half of the ads are now becoming videos and stuff. It's like, oh my gosh, you know the data that requires?
Yeah, one of
That
my
is
worst,
insane.
biggest pet peeves is when I go to a website, I'm just trying to read an article, and suddenly a commercial starts playing. I'm like, where's the commercial? Where is it? I'm scrolling down, I'm trying to find the close or the pause or the mute button. I'm just like, that is an assault on my senses when I'm trying to read something. I don't know how that in particular is legal. If you want to put something up there as an image, but the voice,
Yeah.
that's a little...
Completely unnecessary. Yeah, especially if you're on a phone, for goodness sake. I mean, oh my gosh. You can
Well-
really eat up your data just by visiting web pages.
Well, especially if that web page doesn't have a mobile version.
Well, right.
Yeah, it sucks.
But,
Anyway.
you know. Anyway, sorry, we digress. Guess the point was is that, yeah, in a 7-year span, number of atheists in this country almost doubled. In that same 7-year span, no change happened to the gay population. They were still around 4%.
But what did change is the actual awareness and
Right.
people knowing about them, which is why people thought there was 23% of the United States were gay. Just because their voice is starting to be heard.
And that really matters. That really has a huge impact. And so what we're trying to do now is we're trying to help people understand that gays are people too, so to speak, and that they deserve respect and deserve the same rights as everyone else. They deserve equality.
And they're making a lot of progress. They're making a lot of headway because that's a civil rights issue, as we've discussed before. It's all about they, as a person, deserve equal rights like anybody else in the country, regardless of, race, sex, sexual orientation, whatever that is, origin, all of that. That whole list that you get, I can't even list it off the top of my head. Yeah. Everyone, despite any of that, gets equal rights.
Yeah.
But now we have to turn this around. Atheists kind of get the short end because a lot of people pin us as religious, but we're not religious. And people say we indoctrinate, but we don't. And there is this constant struggle trying to define, well, what is an atheist? Because more often than not, people have a terrible misinterpretation of what we are.
And that's a great point, because you can arrive at atheism via a couple different routes. One of it is actually of belief. There are people who don't believe in a God just because they don't believe in a God. And they really subscribe to that faith very, very strongly and are very resistant to budging on that opinion. That is actually an atheist religion because they're operating on blind belief and faith.
That there is no God, that they haven't taken the time to analyze why they believe that.
Right.
And anything, like you said, that is operated on blind faith, that I think is religion. Well, let's think about that. What defines religion as a religion? There are many, many religions in this whole world. Some of them have been around for thousands of years. Some of them, like the Church of Cannabis or the Flying Spaghetti Monster, have only been around for a little bit. And they sound like such ridiculous religions, but apparently they fall under every category that they need to be to actually be considered a religion on a government level, because they are. So, I guess what makes a religion a religion?
Well, I would say that religion operates on this notion that you are being told about the world in a way that kind of is irrespective of any level of scientific evidence. Because you are being told how the world works. And that is the truth.
Isn't that just called blind faith? Accepting somebody else's truth
It
without...
requires blind faith.
I think religion requires blind faith to a certain level. I mean, some people will say, well, religion asks you to question religion all the time, but when you come down to those hard questions that only science can answer, that's when they have to rely on blind faith. So no matter what your argument is, the science supports this, that, there is always something in every religion that it comes down to blind faith. Something that you don't think will ever change.
And that's why it's very difficult for me to see any instance where a religion is compatible with the entire knowledge base that we have in science.
Maybe people think atheist is more like a cult, because I couldn't say atheism is a full-blown religion. I really don't, and it's a very terrible way of describing it. But I think that people might put the word cult to atheism. People who treat atheism like a religion, and they're told, well, you're an atheist, that is your religion. Well, one, you don't understand what religion actually is, apparently, and two, it doesn't meet the requirements of religion. I think cult is the better word that people would describe it. Because cult isn't exactly a religion, it's a following of a certain doctrine. That's what a cult is, and people could use atheists as that. The atheists that are blind and they haven't taken the time to consider the who, what, where, when, why of why they are atheist. I'm not trying to say atheism is a cult, it's not.
No.
But the people who are fanatic about it and who refuse any other opinion, they act like a cult fanatic.
Well, it's not refusing any other opinion, it's strongly holding to that belief with no sort of evidence to support it.
So that's type 1 of atheists, people who are holding on to that and they're not asking themselves why.
Right.
And when people ask, well, how do you know that's right? They can't give you an answer.
Yeah.
So what's another type of atheist?
And then I would say you start hitting the normal types of atheists and agnostics who don't subscribe to religion. Now, granted, I would almost actually insert atheists at that point, specifically just because of the fact that they when they're in that place and they're not relying on blind faith, that means that they've probably looked at or heard about some of the science behind a number of these different things. And so that's where they really hold that stance that there is no God, because they don't see any evidence in the scientific realm of any sort of supernatural entity. Now, if we go one step further down from them to a third type, so to speak, that's where you start hitting into the agnostic category, where they tend to have a little bit of scientific knowledge, but
that makes them skeptical of a religion, but they want to believe. They wouldn't be surprised. They haven't ruled religion out. Honestly, I personally think that's a little bit of a cop-out. But whatever. That's a nice middle ground between religion and fanatic atheist. So, yeah, that's pretty good. 3 types. Agnostic, a fanatic atheist, and then the typical atheist that you meet is someone who just says, no, science and what we know doesn't support religion as a whole, so that's why I am not religious.
And so as such, we really have to kind of treat those 3 different categories differently. But for the purposes of, saying that people are religious or not religious, we can clump all 3 of those categories together in the not religious category and treat them as such. Because really the net result is the same, which is to say that they're not going to be going to church on Sunday more often than not. So that's really the underlying fact that we're getting at. Because once you make that step to come out and tell your friends and family that you are atheist, that's where everything in your life is going to change.
They're going to try and put a label on you.
Yeah.
And that's when things get scary. Because labels, they define who you are, which I think is terrible. Because that's the thing about religion, is when you're talking to someone about their religion, anything you say about their religion, they take very personally, like you're saying it to them, because religion is who they are, the very core of who they are. And that's a little scary notion, because you take that religion away, who are they? And more often than not, they find themselves a little lost. They have a shell of who they are, but their essence is gone. And that's very scary. And so when somebody says, well, you're an atheist, well, they don't know what label to put you at, because they don't understand, well, what is an atheist? You know what a Muslim is, what a Christian is, you understand a little bit about who this person is based on their religion, which, number one, is terrible, just to judge someone based on their religion, because you want to look at someone who's Muslim versus someone who's a Christian. More often than not, people are going to have very different opinions of those people based on those 2 religions. To me, they're the same thing. They're both religion. They both, preach peace. They both preach some sort of, hell and afterlife and punishment and, good things. But it's the same thing to me, which is why I would associate the same type of personality a little bit to these people. You're both religious, so obviously you want to be good people to get rewarded. That's how I see it. But when you put an atheist in the mix, people get confused. They don't know what to do. That's when you get questions asked, well, how do you know what's good? Or, well, then why are you good if there's no punishment or anything? Then, what's the point of being moral? If you don't have anything holding you to a higher standard, what's keeping you from breaking the law or blah, blah, blah? And they ask really stupid questions. What's keeping me from breaking the law? The law. That's why it's there. You just answered the question. So I find it really, really scary when suddenly you come out and you say, I'm an atheist. What is the label that people are going to put on you? Because there's, like we just discussed, 3 different kind of atheists that jump to people's brain. Are you going to be a crazy fanatic? Are you going to be somebody who is more science? Or are you going to be somebody who is wanting to believe but doesn't see any evidence? And you can make a lot of judgments on those 3 kind of atheists.
You do, and that's the thing, is that I hate it, but you know what? Me personally, I do kind of look down to some degree at certain categories, whether you are religious or maybe not so much the agnostics, but if you're a fanatical atheist, or if you're religious, there's going to be a part of me, admittedly, that, I don't know, does kind of change my opinion a little bit, but it's not going to be something that's going to prevent me from talking with you. Like,
Yeah.
if anything, it encourages me to talk with you, because I would like to hear why you believe that way, or what kinds of things, or what kinds of roles religion plays in your life, and how important you feel it is for your personal well-being and personal development.
Okay, let's put ourselves on the spot here. It's going to be a little uncomfortable, but you're walking down the street and you meet somebody, you're getting to know them a little bit, and they seem pretty nice. They like the same movies you like similar music. You're all getting along great. We're having a good time. But then they say, yes, I'm a Christian, I go to church. What is your immediate thought?
My immediate thought?
Honest, immediate thought. Because these people seem pretty chill. You like them. You're jiving on the same level. But then, boom, something that is completely opposite of the core of them is completely opposite of the core of you. And yet you're still getting along great. What's your first judgment when you hear that?
My first thought is to...
Not thought. What's your first judgment?
Judgment.
Not your... When you say your first thought is to, that's an action. That's what you want to do. What's your first thought about that person when you hear that? That's why I'm talking judgment. Be honest here. Because mine is... My first judgment, if I were to hear that from someone, I'm going to admit it. I would be a little disappointed, because I would suddenly feel like I would have to watch what I say. I would have to be careful around this person because, and this is me, but I don't want to offend them. I don't want to say something that would be rude or, insensitive. That's how I would initially feel, and that would annoy me, because I want to be able to be free to be myself around somebody, just like I want them to be free to be themselves around me. And religion is kind of hard. It really is, to bring two people who have so much in common together, which is why I think in marriages that if you are in different religions or different core beliefs, that's a very hard marriage to maintain. But yeah, that would be my first thought. I would be disappointed because I would have to be careful. I wouldn't think they were ignorant. I wouldn't think they were stupid. But that would be my initial thought, is disappointment. What about yours?
Yeah, disappointed. I guess that disappointment kind of stems from the fact that I when I find somebody that's like me in a number of ways, I would like to have them also share that in common with me. So it disappoints me when I find out that that's not the case. Now, honestly, the next thing on my mind is thinking, hey, well, this person is actually an opportunity for me to have some good discussions with them, since they already share a lot of my interests, and that we could actually get a nice back and forth dialogue going on. So at that point, that's where I'd be more encouraged to hang out with them, to hear about their thoughts and feelings regarding religion in their life.
But do you see what has happened? We put ourselves in that situation, and not once did either of us come across a judgment of these people, thinking that, oh, well, they're lame. Oh, they're stupid. Oh, they're ignorant because they don't accept truth, or, oh, they must not be very smart because they don't believe in the science. We haven't made that step
It
based
depends
solely on their religion.
Now, that's the thing. It depends on the context. If we're just talking about straight up hearing that they're religious, that's what goes through your mind. But if they go on to state something very specific, that's where other judgments can come into play.
My point is, if they, now taking this a step further, if they were to say, yeah, I'm a Christian, and I believe that the earth is 6,000 years old, that's when I screech the brakes on, and that's when I personally start passing that judgment. There's something off with his brain, because to think that is ludicrous, and to think and believe that is, one, denying years of science and proof, and either that or just not taking the time to learn, or remembering things that you learn in elementary school and middle school. Claims, very crazy claims like that that's when my judgment of the person as a person, not just on their religion, start to come in.
And I don't quite go so far as to say that there's something wrong with the brain or anything.
I wouldn't
just,
say, not biologically and physically, but...
I just look at it more as an opportunity to educate them, because it's clear that they don't quite understand much about science or geology or evolution or any of that. And so, yeah, I mean, it's clear that they're somehow ignorant or misunderstanding some of the science behind these things. But honestly, I kind of like seeing that opportunity to educate people.
This is why you're a good teacher, because you see something that is incorrect and you want to jump to correct something, because you're an educator. Like you said, you want to educate them and you want to bring facts to the world. You want to, set them right, because that's the way the world is and they need to know that. Whereas me, I start thinking they're a little weird to believe something that ludicrous.
But see, that's the thing, is that my next step is proactive, trying to interact with them. Whereas a lot of people, if the tables were turned and a Christian person or a religious person that I was talking to all of a sudden found out that I was atheist.
There'd be one of two things.
Right. And what would those two things be?
One, the Christian family would say, okay, I can't hang out with you because you're bad. Is that what you were going to say?
That's happened once or twice.
Yeah, and then the second one is they would be just as proactive as you, trying to bring you back to the light or show it to you for the first time.
Right.
Kind of crazy.
Yeah. So we basically have situations where you can either clam up and kind of just accept them as being weird and just kind of toss them in the discard pile.
Go over there.
Unfriend them, from Facebook or whatever you have to do. And that'll be the end of it. You don't have to deal with that person or that kind of awkward situation anymore. But on the other hand, if you start being proactive about it, that's where we can start seeing a potential for a dialogue happening between the two parties. And that's part of what we've seen in the past few years with atheism, is that more and more people are willing to have that dialogue because they're seeing that there's a community of atheists. We're not just, one person out of 10,000 people. We are one person out of, what would that be? I'm trying to do that math in my head real quick. Not very successfully. One person out of 12 people. Okay. That's not even right. But anyway, you get the point. We're actually pretty close to getting to that 10% range, to being 1 out of 10 people. And that's where lots of wonderful things can happen. You've seen all the gluten-free things at the super food stores, and the people that really need that comprise probably about 10% of the population.
People with celiac disease.
People with celiac disease and with sensitive forms of IBS,
and
or irritable bowel syndrome.
Well, it kills me because a lot of people, they're going crazy over this gluten madness, but they don't even know what gluten is, and they have a bag of lettuce, and they ask, is this gluten-free?
Right.
Lettuce isn't gluten. Gluten is wheat. So why would lettuce be gluten? There's no wheat in gluten. There's no wheat in lettuce. It's crazy when people try and get on the wagon of a popular idea when they don't even know what the wagon is made of or who's on it.
But, we can track that back to atheism again, because we see these fanatical atheists that are going on that bandwagon without really understanding why they're there. And that's a problem.
And then you get this wagon full of really loud, kind of obnoxious people giving a really bad image to what atheists and atheism really is. And
so I don't want to portray atheism as being loud and obnoxious, basically trying to bring everyone down.
Because we don't.
I don't want to portray that. Just like I don't want to portray gay people as being loud and obnoxious and trying to convert the rest of the world to being gay.
Like force their lifestyle on other people, because they're not. They just want to be equal to everyone else. They just want to exist. And just like atheists, we just want to exist. and have the same rights and the same voice as the other religions do. Because that's kind of important.
And that's one thing that's kind of interesting. If we go to look at the interplay between atheism and homosexuality and politics, between all those different things, we see some very interesting statistics here. So I'm going to, bear with me, I'm going to reference some surveys here again. In 2016, a Pew survey actually said that 51% of American voters would be less likely to support a president that was an atheist.
Which means just a little over half of the people don't want an atheistic president.
Right. And we can compare that to 9 years ago in 2007 when it was actually 63%.
Yeah.
So almost 2/3 of the population wanted nothing to do with an atheist political officer running for president.
Yeah.
That's crazy to me.
But we have an exception now, don't we? And we're trying not to be political, but this is kind of important because, this is saying that the people who are religious want a religious president. They want a religious president that is very, very important to them. Except
for Trump.
Trump.
Donald Trump, man. He is just a very interesting case in a number of ways. Quite the anomaly in a number of ways.
This election is going in the history books. It's going to be quite fun to read about 10 years from now.
Right.
It really is, actually. Now that I think about it, 10, 20 years, what is history going to write about the Trumpster?
How we're all a bunch of morons. That's how they're going to write it.
They're either going to write about how we are a bunch of morons or how suddenly we broke some tradition or it was like one of the most progressive idealist elections ever and shouldn't have happened, but it did because America was so idealistic and progressive. I don't know what they'll say, but what are they saying about Trump?
So that's what's interesting. If we actually look at the voters, the GOP voters, 17% of them think that he is not religious. Think that Trump isn't religious.
Well, he's made himself look and appear non-religious.
Right. And that is 17 times higher than how they think about any other GOP candidate. Now, granted, this was done at the beginning of the year, so that was while we still had Ted Cruz and Marco Rubio hanging around. One other guy, I can't remember who the other one was.
Kasich.
Who was it?
John Kasich, I'm not sure if he was still in the running or not, I forget, but those were the big GOP. It was,
yeah.
Cruz, Rubio, Kasich, Trump, and some other.
Yeah, so anyway, point is that Trump really had the highest rating for being perceived as non-religious than any of the others. And yet he had the highest rating also. The highest rating of people that would think that he would be a good or great president. Okay. So of the GOP voters, they not only thought, 56% of them thought that he would make a good or great president, but 17% of them thought that he was not religious. So absolutely crazy to think about.
Yeah, and interpret that data a little bit because pretty much you've said that everyone in the GOP party, 17% didn't think he was religious.
Right.
But 56% thought he would be a great president.
Right.
What is that implying?
So that's implying that they associate Trump with being great, even though they really think that he's not religious, more so than any other candidate.
So what they're saying is that the GOP party, who religion is very important to them, they say they want somebody in office who's religious. The country has said that. So it's not the GOP party considering... it's not the GOP party that has only said religion is important. The entire country wants a religious president. So the whole country wants a religious president. But when it comes to the GOP party, the greatest president is the one who's non-religious.
Yeah.
People who think is the best idea president is the non-religious. Let that sink in. Nobody wants an atheistic president or a non-religious president. And yet this election, it is a non-religious. I'm not going to use the word atheist because that's never been associated with him. I'm trying to stick with the facts here, but the most non-religious president is supposed to be the greatest one.
Yeah.
That just cracks my brain.
Yeah, it really does. It's a game changer.
It's like people want their cake and have it too, but then they sit there and it's like, okay, I want to eat my cake, but I have it too, so you know what? I'm just going to say no more cake. I'm going to have pie.
And honestly, I think some of it comes down to people perceiving his lack of ties to religion as being a strength.
Yeah, they start saying that, oh, Trump tells it like it is. You know, he's smart. He tells it like it is. He's bold. He's all of these things, and you know that's his strong point.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he's not politically correct, and that. You know, in some cases, a lot of that is a strength. Trump does have some great qualities that could make him a great president. The sad thing is that he also has a lot more qualities that, our personal opinion, is that won't make him a great president. But these traits are not traits that a religious group would encourage. You know, a religious association encourages tolerance. They encourage kindness. They encourage turn the other cheek. They encourage political correctness.
At least superficially.
Yes, superficially. But, you know, Trump is behaving like a fanatical atheist. You know, his behavior and his demeanor is somebody who says, I believe this is it, but I haven't given any reason why I think that. I just believe this is the way it is and no one can tell me otherwise. And that's exactly what people didn't want. And yet he comes and people are just suddenly magically changing their minds. And that blows my mind.
I absolutely admire his conviction, having... You know, the opportunity to see him in person. I really do admire his energy and his ability to drive a crowd, to what I like to say, corral a mob, because that's really what he did.
Inspire people. Yeah, this isn't our experience is based on memes or videos or things that we've heard from other people. No, we were there. We listened to him. We saw the crowd. We were there firsthand. So it's not like we took a video out of context or something. We were there.
Yeah.
And that's where we're getting our opinions from. But, you know, that's why people might not want to say who they're voting for, because if they want to say they vote for Hillary, they're going to get smashed on. If they say they're voting for Trump, they get smashed on. If they're voting for the third part, they get smashed on. People don't want to say they're an atheist when it comes to religion. Well, what religion are you? Well, people don't really mind asking that question because more often than not, they're going to get religious, Catholicist, whatever.
Lutheran. Baptist. Yeah.
But people don't want to say atheist just as much as people don't want to say Muslim. Funny statistic on that.
We have a 2014, 2014 Pew survey that reported this kind of what they call a feeling thermometer kind of survey. It's essentially a way of getting an idea of how people feel about certain groups of other people. Okay, now classically we could look at this as far as like politics, like what we were just discussing, you know. What are people's opinions of Democrats versus Republicans versus independents? And we can measure that on a scale of 1 to 100. Well, I guess it's technically 0 to 100. And basically 100 means that you're really comfortable with that topic or with that group of people. And then 0 means that you really hate it or disgusted by it or whatever. So they have kind of a hot and cold scale here. That's why they call it the thermometer. And when we look at religion and a number of the different types of major religions here in the U.S., whether we're talking about Judaism, Christianity, whatever, we see the big ones playing out in a very different way than I honestly expected. And honestly, we end up seeing
what are the bigger ones first? Like
that's
Christians and
vegetables. So we have at the top, the top three. We have the Jews at the very top at 63%, immediately followed by the Catholics and the evangelical Christians. So all those guys are real tightly packed at around 62%.
So people are very comfortable.
Yeah. They're fine with those, generally speaking.
You know, if they're in a crowd with those people, they don't have any weird, uncomfortable feelings or judgments.
Right.
No, we're chill with them. We like them.
And I was really surprised to see the Jews at the top. Based on their historical, how much people have discriminated against them in the past. It's really impressive to see them being at the top of any category here in the U.S.
Well, that makes me wonder, because they had so much discrimination and so much against them, I'm not saying sympathy, but if, that discrimination, that persecution.
Persecution, thank you.
That persecution has brought them to a level of realizing this is wrong. They shouldn't be persecuted just for this religion. That is completely wrong. I think their level of persecution was so high that people just wiped that and said, no, Jews are fine. There is no reason for this. We're cool with them. Not ever a problem. You know, there's still some racial jokes, but there's that. I would think that that is why Jews would be at the top, is because there was such a huge persecution of them, and people rallied to them, and they saw how wrong was it.
When do you think that big event really occurred?
What big event?
That big turnover in public opinion.
Well, I would think it was sometime after the Holocaust, after Hitler, after everything started to mend, because the whole world had their eyes on the Jewish community, because they were just being killed left and right, and it turned into not just discrimination, it didn't turn into, you know, little persecution, it turned into genocide. And that's just, they said, nope, none of this is not okay, and it gave a big sympathy vote towards the Jews, and I think their opinion changed because of something like that. You know, just like, I hate to bring this up so soon, but Orlando was terribly tragic, and funny enough, Trump made a shout out to the LGBT community at the convention, and people were flipping over it, saying, oh, that's never been said at the convention, that's never heard of, that's just so progressive, blah blah blah, when really he hasn't really cared or said anything or made any moves to show his support for them at all. But then something like this happened, and there is a lot more positive spin on the LGBT community. You know, Facebook, there were rainbows all over everyone's profiles. Right. It was like the whole world unified because something pretty bad happened. And look at that. Being gay isn't such a terrible thing. But why does it take something so terrible to happen for people to actually give you the sympathy vote and say, okay, we'll be okay with you now because you've been beat down enough, you've been through enough, so you're good now. I mean, do we have to go through this rite of passage of persecution before we have earned our equal rights? That's just terrible. It really is terrible. But
humans, man. Humans are funny about those sorts of things.
That's the thing. You know, they're
slow learners.
So, yeah, being an atheist, we didn't get to talk too much about why it's so hard being an atheist. So we might have to address that later in the future.
Mm-hmm. But I guess the other point I really wanted to make, we mentioned that feeling thermometer study.
Yes.
The top three were the three that you would expect. Two kinds of Christians and Jews. But at the bottom, okay, at the very bottom, you'll find Muslims at 40%. Okay. Now that's unfortunate. We all know exactly why that is.
And why
I hate
is
that.
Another action of persecution and another action of a lot of death. And I hate that.
Yeah,
I hate that.
You know, we got to witness the way that certain Middle Eastern people were treated just in the Three Rivers Parade here in town.
Yeah, so we had a big Three
ago.
Rivers Parade, and the whole parade is all these different organizations in the community of Fort Wayne. Tons, you know, from dance troupes to bakeries to kid organizations to churches to, you know, anything you could think of in a community that takes place, farmers markets, whatever. Yeah. But then there was the, you know, what were they called? Sheiks of America?
Something like that, yeah.
But basically it was
remember.
a group of sheiks and Saudi Arabians who were proud to be American. Let that sink in. But they were Arabic people who were proud to be American, and they had a banner and they said, God bless America. And, you know, yes, they were in their traditional garb and they were waving, they were smiling, and they had a banner.
There were probably 24 of them, I think. There were a lot of them.
There was the American flag on the banner, and it was God bless America, the great country of America. And there was nothing written in Arabic. It was all English, anything you would see from a multicultural aspect. Wasn't there an Indian group too?
I don't remember anymore.
I'm not sure, but it was no different than anything else we saw. And everyone would cheer and yell and praise everyone else on the parade, but when they walked down, it was silent. Just because they were Arabian, and that made me so mad because of that discrimination, because that's 40% on that scale, on that thermometer, and it's just ridiculous.
Now, take that 1% above, okay, and that's where you'll find the atheists.
41?
41% of Americans, or Americans think of atheists as being about 41% on that scale, I should say. which is to say, pretty crappily.
Yeah.
Okay. I believe the next highest percentage on that scale was like 53%. Okay, so nothing comes close to being Muslim or atheist in America.
Yeah.
Those are the two worst things to be in America right now.
So if we had a banner in that parade walking around, atheist, having that word, yeah, we probably would have just been silent, cold shoulder.
The exact same treatment. Because if we look at homosexuality or the feeling of Americans towards homosexuals, we'd look at where it was at in the year 2000. Okay, in the year 2000, when we didn't have most of these things around, pride marches and such. In the year 2000, Americans rated homosexuals at about 47%.
And that's still a little bit higher than Muslims and atheists.
That's 6% higher than atheists. Okay? Fast forward to 2013, that number's climbed to 55%. Okay? They're actually getting into the warm part of the spectrum.
Yeah.
All right? To where people actually feel more favorably towards homosexuals. And yet, that's still 14% higher than how Americans think about atheists.
Yeah.
So we have a long way to go when it comes to atheists.
And I'm really, really happy and I'm really proud and I support the LGBT community in making such progress that they have. And, what was the percentage for gays? 4%?
Yeah.
Yeah. And what's the percent of people claiming to be atheists in the United States? 7%. So that's great that the gay community is starting to warm on that thermometer scale. But what about atheists? We should be climbing in that scale as social tolerance starts becoming more normal. People being tolerant and acceptant and freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom to be who you are. But in how many years? 7 years? Mm-hmm. We're still at like 7%.
Something like that, yeah.
We're still small. Why is that? We are in the age of media, communication. Why are people afraid to be atheists? Because I personally think there's more people out there who are atheists, but they're afraid to say it because of the fact that we're hated just as much as Muslims. People think we're crazy. People think that we are these evil people with no morals, that we're almost anarchists, to be completely honest. So what do we have to do to show the world that we're normal, that we have the same rights as anybody else in the religious voice, that we have the same rights to say, I don't believe in God, and to prove that to the world, and to say that in schools, and to say that in public places as somebody who is religious that says, I believe in God. I mean, they have the right, we have the right. Why not?
All right. So I think that's pretty good for this episode. Thank you for listening to Based on Facts. If you're interested in finding any of our episodes online, you can simply search for it at Facebook or YouTube just by searching for Based on Facts in the search bar. So thank you so much for joining us. My name is Chris Rex. This is my wife Uriah, and have a great week.